Dolores is an icon.
She's a civil rights hero.
She's the first general that I followed into war.
She's not afraid to speak truth to power.
Dolores Huerta, who is an old friend of mine.
The FBI knew how dangerous Dolores was. Dolores came up with the slogan, Si se puede.
Yes, we can.
Dolores, thank you so much for being here with us, and welcome everybody to this one of our last Fireside chats. And I want to welcome Dolores Huerta to the Latinas in Tech Summit 2022. Thank you, Dolores. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
This is a dream come true. For many, many years, we've been following you. We know so many beautiful things you've done with our community. And I mean, it needs no introduction. Most people know Dolores Huerta, know her amazing job, but just as a refresher of it, or if anybody's from another country and they don't know, could you please tell us a little bit about what has been your cause, what has been your fight, and the legacy that you have been building for many generations to come?
Well, basically what we try to do is try to get people to understand that they have the power to improve their lives. And they have to realize that they can't wait for somebody to come in from the outside to do it for them, that they have the power to do it themselves. And to many of them, that sounds like an impossibility, but then we teach them how to do that. We teach them how to come together, how to organize, how to take direct action. So they find themselves going to school board meetings and to city council meetings and to the state legislature to advocate for particular pieces of legislation that they want. So then they find that by them doing the work, then when we have our victories, they know that they can be so proud because they're the ones that did it.
Yeah, and your work is about giving the power to the people, the power to organize. So now let's go back several years before when in California the field workers were not having the equal rights that they should be having then. Tell us about that particular situation that triggered your activism. What factors caught your eyes as inequality that made you and Cesar Chavez to start working to a better tomorrow, for a better tomorrow?
Well, both Cesar and I were very lucky because we were trained by this master organizer. His name is Fred Ross Sr. And he taught us how to do the grassroots organizing, meeting with families, a few here and a few there, in their homes, until we could build a base of over 100 people, and then we would start taking direct action. And some of the first things that we did was to go out and register people to vote, to go door to door. I can give you an example. We have a farmer woman in a town called Lamont, California, not too far from here. And she got involved in passing a petition to build a bond issue to build a brand new gymnasium for the middle school kids, because the air pollution is so bad in this part of the world that a lot of times the kids couldn't go out for recess or for lunch. They had to stay in the classroom all day long. So by passing this bond issue, they were able to build a brand new gymnasium in their school for the middle school. And then she was so excited about what they did that then she decided to run for the school board.
Yeah.
And there was one of the principals that wanted to end the breakfast program for the farmer good children.
Yeah.
So she got rid of him and kept the program.
Nice. Now, farmer workers found a much better situation through unionizing and pursuing the American dream. And farm workers had children. Those children were Americans, and they studied. A lot of them are now working in tech industry, and we find them struggling with having an equal pay, especially Latinas, having their voices heard, growing in the corporate ladder. So I find a couple similarities. So my question number one on this is going to be, what would you recommend to these Latinas and Latinos and allies to do to seek equal representation and in California, we are consumers of technology, our Latino population, but we want to be the makers and leaders of technology. So that's number one. The second, and I'm sorry, I'm throwing two questions at once. The second is, as individual selves, as a person, you were talking about unionizing and grassroots activism. How could this translate into the tech world where we have employee resource groups, so that we call them ERGs, and it reminds me a little bit of that. So how would you, what would you recommend to each person, each cell, to advocate for themselves and have their voices heard, perhaps not a union but an ERG? So two questions at once. What do you think?
Well, I think that they have to learn how to advocate for themselves first of all, and if they don't, then nobody's going to advocate for them. So they have to do whatever that they can to make sure that the companies that they work for, that they respond to their demands and their requests, especially in terms of improving their professional skills and abilities. So, but again, if they don't ask for it, if they don't pressure for it, and one way that they can do that is by getting all of the workers at their particular company to sign a petition, so that that worker is not standing there by herself, you know, that there are people behind her, because it always makes it easier to negotiate or with the company that you work for if you have more employees that are involved.
That makes sense. And now, what would you tell the companies, the tech companies, everything from the Googles, the Facebook, the Oracles, even non-traditional tech companies like the Home Depots or the Nike? What would you tell them when referring to how to manage their Latino population?
Well, it's important, number one, that they have diversity on their board, that they have diversity on their staff, and not just to be a token, but that they have enough people that can really make a difference when they are making decisions. And so I think that's what we have to look at, because if we're going to stop the racism that exists in our society, it's got to start not only at the bottom, but also at the top. And so we have to start pressuring these companies that, wait a minute, we have a lot of people of color here that are that are talented in the tech industry, and if not, let's put classes on so we can have more.
Yeah, I really like it, and right now it's a moment. You mentioned board members of tech companies or companies in general. There was a law that passed a couple years ago that demands boards to have at least two diverse members every year, and with diverse it can be a different, like a person of color, a woman, or a woman of color. That makes Latinas really desirable for boards. Now, tell us, what is the impact of having a Latino or a Latina at the board level of a company?
Well, yeah, I think we want to have more than one person. We don't want a token, or if you have two, then you have a buddy system. So we have to have enough people that it can really make a difference, because otherwise they will be outvoted every time that they try to suggest something that would change. So it's got, you know, in this day and age that we're living, it's not enough to say I'm not a racist. You could be an anti-racist. So you've got to take actions that will really get rid of racism. And just having one or two persons on the board of a company is not enough. You've got to have enough so that you can really make an impact on the policies that are being passed.
Definitely. Definitely. So in my personal experience, in my career, when I was working in tech, say I'm at first company, my second company, for many years, almost a decade, I never had a colleague above of me, of my position that was a Latino, or let alone a Latina. So it is hard when you don't have a community to unionize, like to partner with. Like, how can I do as an individual to, you know, arm myself, maybe with security, to come out of my shell and have my voice heard, maybe become the hiring manager, or be really, you know, having my ideas being not only taken but actually have it be part of those projects that I suggest. So what would you suggest to those Latinas that feel alone in this industry?
Well, one of the things that you can always do is pass a petition on the other workers, so that when you go to present an idea to the company, you're not there by yourself. You've got like 100 signatures on that petition, so that the company knows they're not just dealing with you, they're dealing with a large group of their own workers.
Yeah.
So that would be very important.
That makes sense. And now if we look down to, let's say, the pipeline, we hear a lot that there's not a lot of Latinos because there's not a lot of pipeline. With pipeline, it means people that are qualified and studied STEM. So with your experience working with communities, how have you seen the Latino community embracing technology as a field of study in early or medium education?
Well, we know it's a necessity. I mean, at this point in time, you really can't work unless you are tech savvy. And I think a lot of the younger people are tech savvy, but a lot of the older ones like myself are not. And it's been really harmful because during the pandemic, even in some communities, they gave them the notebooks so that the kids could study, but sometimes the parents didn't know how to help them. And then we have areas we don't have any broadband at all, so they would have to drive maybe a truck or a bus into an area to provide the kids with broadband while they study. And we know that this is really, really going to hurt our community because our students are now, they were behind to begin with, because they were not getting the same kind of education that the white students were getting, and now they're going to be left even further behind. So if there was any time that we need tech savvy, it is now.
It is now.
And especially for our communities of color.
And now when we talk about entrepreneurs, Latinos starting their own business, and sometimes they seek for investment. We see like for every 100 companies, one is a Latinx company, not because they don't exist, but because it's the ones that are going to get funding. So we're lagging behind there. I see a lot of innovation, but very little attention in the investment. What is your perspective on the entrepreneurial scenario for the Latinos? Are we not asking? Are we not innovating? Are we not doing things? Or there's a systemic problem?
Well, I would say it's a systemic problem because we know that Latinos and Latino youth are very assertive, and they're trying to, again, be able to not fit in but belong to some of these tech companies and to work for some of these tech companies. So we have to do a lot more work to make sure that the tech companies open the door, so that Latinas and Latinos can work for them in technology.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, tell me a little bit about your experience with allyship. Latinos should fight on their own, but sometimes we can totally take the help of others. So tell me about the importance of having an ally, and really what makes an ally a good ally to a Latino. So when we try to pass a legislation or even sell a project to our bosses, or as Latinas, should we step up for ourselves, but then also having a Latino do it, an ally do it for us, or in coordination with us? What would you say about the importance of allyship?
Well, it's important to have allies, because if you have allies, especially the issues that we're talking about, if you have allies that can side with you and say they can go to a tech company and ask them, how many people of color do you have on your board? How many people of color do you have on your staff? And this is a really strong question. So if you have allies with other organizations, community groups or business groups or faith organizations that are standing there with you, it's going to make the company kind of take a second look, because maybe it doesn't bother them that you have some Latinos that are angry with you or upset with you because you don't have enough people on staff. But then when you bring in other people from their own community, from the Anglo community, then of course they're going to sit up and pay attention.
Yeah, definitely.
And most people want to help, actually. I think we're in a moment right now in our country where people want to see change. And so now is the perfect moment to do this.
It is. And as an individual, like an ally, one person, or as a company, we at Latinos in Tech, we have seen this year and last year, the interest for helping people of color after the Black Lives Matter situation happened, and now with COVID really hurting vulnerable parts of our population, our demographic got the benefit of attention and allyship, as you say. So maybe this moment is a very important moment. So that touches into another topic I want to discuss with you, which is fear from people. Like, I'm a Latina, I have my qualifications, but I feel like I need to be 200% qualified to apply to something. I don't ask for a raise because I'm hoping that if I try 2-3 times as hard, somebody will come and say, good job, you deserve a raise. And the fear of asking and coming across as unpolite or too aggressive, or maybe just the fear of getting a no. So what would you say to Latinas that have imposter syndrome or fear for failure?
Well, in order to get ahead, you have to overcome that fear. And one of the ways that you can do that is by pretending you're somebody else.
Fake it until you make it.
Yeah, pretend you're Wonder Woman, and you're gonna, or that you're speaking on behalf of your colleagues. Sometimes that's easier to do than speaking up for yourself. But the main thing is you do have to make a plan how you're going to accomplish this to make sure that you get what you want, and be sure that you have your colleagues that are there with you, or some of your colleagues, because remember, I always say to people, even God, who was, Jesus, who was God, and he performed miracles, he still needed the 12 disciples to help him. Okay? So just remember that you don't have that obligation to go to it alone. You always have to get other people to help you.
Yeah. It is beautiful, and for tech people, the way I would land this is the people that is there to help you is the people of your ERG group. So if there is an ERG group at your company, join them, because they are going to be your familia, the people that will help you, have their voices heard as a group, and that group is very powerful. If your company does not have an ERG group, and I will say it again, it's an employee resource group, then be the one starting it. And have more people come, and have your executives give you bias. So the power of the collective.
Exactly. And remember this, that you're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing it for everybody else. You're doing it for the future of young people that are going into the tech business. And they're all wanting to learn about technology, but we also want to make sure that they get hired.
Yeah.
So we have to step up to these tech companies and say, we want people on your board. People of color on your board. We want women on your board. We want them not only on your board, but we want them there in positions where they can help you make decisions and be supervisors, right?
Yeah. And hiring managers.
And managers, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
In addition to just people that do the work.
Yeah. Oh my God, so many questions.
And let me say this about women too. Coretta Scott King said that we will never have peace in the world until women take power. So we think about that, and that's what we're all striving for. And technology is a big part of creating the social justice movement. So we definitely need to have more women.
Yeah, so let's talk more about women. Within the Latino community, we all come with things that maybe sometimes we need to unlearn. In our countries, in our communities, machismo is embedded into generations where women have to step back. Behind every great man there's a woman, but there's always behind. So this and also being soft-spoken and not coming across as aggressive, all those things. How do you think a Latina can succeed by embracing those things, or stepping up out of their comfort zone to accomplish equal? So what would be your advice for women in particular?
Well, the only way that we can succeed is to step out of our comfort zone, and we have to change the traditions that are keeping women behind. And especially we have to set that example up, especially for the young people. And it's not easy. And the machismo is not only within our community, it's in our society as a whole. So we have to continually keep working to end that. Even when we think of our Congress of the United States, only 35% of the people in the House of Representatives are women. And we look at the U.S. Senate, we've only got a handful of women in the Senate. So we've got to change that. And women have got to be decision makers. And I like to say, if there is a board somewhere in the world that's making decisions, if you do not have 50% of people on that board that are feminist women or feminist men, they're going to make the wrong decision.
Yeah, absolutely. So the things I'm taking from this conversation is you have to empower yourself and have your voice heard. Accentuate your voice by regrouping with others, maybe in an ERG group. Get out of your comfort zone and do not fear. Dolores, this is amazing, and I am sure our audience has many questions for you. So next we will go into a session of a Q&A session so that our audience can ask Dolores a few questions. But thank you so much on behalf of Latinas in Tech for your time. Thank you so much for everything you've done for our community. It is something we will forever treasure, and we're really lucky to have you here today with us. Thank you, Dolores.
Well, I feel very honored to be interviewed with you, and I'm very jealous of all of the women out there that are in tech. And just, I want to say, please share the knowledge and share the power.
We will. Sí se puede.
Sí se puede.
Thank you.